You are watching Distance Learning from Laughing Water Studio. Today we'll be painting waves.
Good morning, welcome back. Today we're going to do an exercise in painting waves. We'll have a couple of rocks to paint and then waves in a number of different type of strokes. I will be using, let me show you the model. This is our model. So we'll start with the rocks with some outlines, some shading, some wash, and then we'll do the waves. And the waves have these sort of little curly Q lines, which are with little circles inside. They're called water pearls. So some of them are quite distinct, kind of snake-like. What we'll do is work in one area, another area, another area, another area, another, and then connect them with transitional strokes. This model is done in, the rocks are in black and gray, the water is in some black and a lot of gray. For the purpose of this demonstration, I'm going to do all the water just in full ink so that it's a little clearer from viewing it on the video. So let me change the camera and we'll get started. So to do this exercise, we're going to use both our landscape brush, which is, I think, about 8 inches long, has dark hair on it, and our detail brush, which is actually about the same length, but a much smaller brush. So landscape brush, detail brush, we'll be using both of them. We'll start with the landscape brush. Since I'm just starting out this morning, I'm going to first get my brush fully wet, wick it off, and get some of that excess moisture out of there. Use my wash dish to continue to stroke those hairs. I don't want to be twisting because then my hairs will get in a mess, and we want have a good hair day. Go to my ink, pick up a little bit of ink, and then mix it into the brush. Don't need a lot of ink in this brush today because we're just going to be doing a couple of rock shapes. I want to test that on a test sheet. It's a little bit wet, so I'm going to take a little bit of tissue. The first outline strokes I want to have basically a drier, rougher stroke, but still in black. So I'll start with the rocks, and the first set of rocks are in the middle here, and I come down almost like an axe stroke. So I press hard at the beginning of it and then lift as I come down. A little bit of outline, another axe stroke, another little bit of outline, come down. And I can add to that. And then another one, yet another one, and one more for good measure. So think of rocks you would see up on Lake Superior, on a big lake. And as we are used to, we have basically a host rock and a guest rock. Now I'm going to mix a little bit of wash and actually I'm going to hold on that for the moment. Put that over here and switch my brushes. I'm going to switch to my detail brush, again getting it wet, forming a point, take a little bit of water out, pick up some ink, mix it. I want these strokes to be saturated but not running with moisture. So it's a like all of this, it's a little balance. So I'm going to start in the front of this first rock and do these little, almost like little bubble shapes. They can be vaguely connected and then go off. Let's put another one. These are the waves that are hitting this rock. And again, they would refer to these as, and I'm blanking on what the name is, jewels, water jewels. Another one over here comes long and then hits that rock. And if you're in the right spirit, these can also maybe look like little ghosts, Casper or otherwise. And I'm just positioning these, what will be the edge of the wash. I'll bring the wash down for these rocks right above those jewels, and then I can complete the jewels by just putting in a little circle or semicircle. And again, the next time you go to a museum when they are open again, you could look or go online and look and see water done in Chinese painting, and you will see the water jewels. So then I will continue moving out from there. Have something going here between these two rocks. I just want to reinforce what I've already started. I'm having a little bit of challenge keeping a point on this. And another one, and another one. The hard part of water is just getting a sense of flow. They need to be strong lines, but they need to have some flow to them. And then I'm just working out. Really doesn't matter which direction you work in, left to right, right to left. But trying to get a smoothness to it, also a levelness to it. Come back over here and add some more detail. This one's coming around. And some more coming into this bunch. And what I'm doing, it's like doing shading. I'm doing the first layer of these. Then I will come back and weave them a little closer together. Here's another water pearl. And yet another. So we'll call that the first group. Then we'll have a second group going off this way, and these I will start up here above this rock. Now as they start getting farther apart, they will also start getting flatter and shorter. And in this case, also just a little bit of direction upward. And as we've done in other situations, we want to go boldly off the page to increase the size of the picture. So don't leave a border around, do go boldly off. So now I've have this set, I'm going to start drifting a little bit of an angle upward. I will do some that are more connected here to get a sense of a trend. And then again, as it's going farther out, it is also leveling off just a little bit. So you want to get a sense of movement, of waves coming in. I will come over to this side and finish off first the foreground, and now I'm working right to left. It's a good idea to practice in both directions so that your skills are refined in both directions. And here I'm also imitating what I just did on the other side. This is now again at a little bit of an angle. And then flattening out a bit, leveling out a bit as it goes up. Then I go farther out. I have another set, and this is sort of a little quieter. It must be between the waves. And the farther I go out, the shorter the line, the more spacing, then even farther still. And then out here, there's just a little bit of sort of turbulence or a wave that's forming, a little more detail, even though they're short lines. And then I'm going to connect all of these with intermediate lines to complete the groups. So here we can put another one. Okay, just refreshing the ink. So these are more like, even thinking of them more like you would a dot, just as ways to strengthen or connect, mimic some of the flow, but also create a unity. Now, if you're using shades of gray on this, here I'm going almost just little dashes just to get the pieces that are disappearing into the mist. So this flows, I can complete the front here. And sometimes doing little shapes just to support what is already on the page, and sometimes directing it in new directions if it's a little bit plain where you've done it. Now, unfortunately, and you probably already realize this, is I'm making this look so easy. And to tell a tale on myself, I remember when I was first learning water, studying with Hong, and Kitty, who I studied with years later, would talk about how just painful that was watching me struggle with water because I could not paint water to save my life. And I was painting the falls, and at some point, Hong, in his gentle frustration, said, stop painting, go to the falls and look. And so I did that, and we're talking a fair number of years ago, and I was fairly clueless, and it's like, well, it's just water. What am I looking for, and not really knowing what to be looking for. This takes time, and the suggestion to go and look at water is a very good one. It's time well spent, particularly if you're not feeling really motivated to paint today. Painting, only a small measure of it is actually picking up the brush. A lot of it is in training your eye. That's what I'm going to be talking about in the dance of the hand and the eye, that it's not just working the brush, but it's also training your eye. And if you're not consciously training your eye, you're going to have a harder time creating the paintings. So time sitting by the side of a body of water, staring for, any number of hours, is all part of your practice. I was going to open today and had forgotten by the time I got the tape rolling with a little talk about motivation, because I know you're all in different stages of development and different areas of expertise, and so it's hard to generalize, but I have a suspicion that there's at least one of you out there that's having trouble finding the energy, the focus, the discipline, whatever you want to call it, to sit down and actually paint. And so that's a natural thing. That's the very first piece of advice I have when you're experiencing that is, first and foremost, be gentle with yourself. Be kind, be nice. The more you practice, being nice to yourself, the easier it might be to being nice to other people. But don't beat yourself up over it. It's really not worth it, and it doesn't advance the progress. But there are things you can do, like if it's not a day where you actually think you can stand to put brush to paper, spend 10 minutes just looking at the model. That is time well spent. If you can't do that, look out the window or go in your backyard and with your eye and your mind, just compose a composition. If it's a flower, if it's a tree, if it's a landscape or whatever it is, a bird, look at it and say, okay, if I were to paint this today, what would that look like? And not even what would that look like, but where would I start? Where is the structure? And just to keep that practice of training the eye is in some ways even more important than the practice of loading brush and putting it to paper. Another piece of advice, because I'm almost finished here, is to get that first stroke on the paper. I've been working on this mammoth painting of Grand Canyon, but the paper was laid out literally for 3 weeks before I could bring myself to put brush to paper. If it takes me 3 weeks to get the courage to do that, give yourself a break. Be easy with yourself, and one advice would be just get the first stroke on. It may be a lousy stroke, but get the first stroke done. Once you have marked the paper, it's easier to continue. So get at least one stroke on. Don't just sit there in terror. Get something on it. All of this is a study. Life is a study. And so that's a little motivational piece. And now we have our rocks, our water pearls, our different groups of water, and they're drifting, probably drifting inward actually, from the distance. And that's our exercise for today. So give it a try, do a little bit at a time, practice on a side sheet some of these long strokes. They're hard, you don't need much in your brush, but you need a good point. So until next time, that's it, and have a good week. Thanks.